Geology. Geology. This is Daniel Menizini, your inquisitive geologist here from KPFT HD2 channel, Montrose, in the heart of Houston, Texas. Hello to everybody, welcome to Mini Geology, another show on that program that puts in contact our beloved discipline geology with the common daily life and the applications of it. The applications of geology to the common daily life. Today I would like to talk about life, ideas and mindset of a giant of geology that unfortunately he died in late October 2018. I'm talking about Eldridge Moores from University of California, Davis, a pioneer in plate tectonics, who was president of the Geological Society of America, who is president in 1996, and as editor of the famous scientific journal Geology from 81 to 89. He worked to share science with the public and full of excitement that never waned. So, Professor Eldridge Moores, a long-time U.S. Davis professor and field researcher, he left a permanent mark on geology and a gaping hole in the hearts of those who admired him. I interviewed him in 2014. I was in Carmel during a conference of history of geology, and he was there with his good friend Bill Dickinson, the late Bill Dickinson. They were almost there to be studied. It was not exactly like that, but you know what I mean. Both Bill Dickinson and Eldridge Moores, they are now in another dimension, and they left behind a great legacy. So I tried to extract from him how his mindset worked, and I would like to share this with you. One of his main ideas and messages was be creative and take risks. So with this, I'm gonna leave you to the interview, and excuse the wind that you're gonna see because you're gonna listen, because imagine me interviewing him sitting on a chair under a pine tree very close to the Pacific Ocean in Carmel, just south of the Monterey Bay, and that is where we talk, and this is the talk that we had. Okay, so good morning, Eldridge. Good morning. So the first question is, you have been eclectic in your career. You have been studying different topics, and you're interested in many different topics. So first is, how would you describe yourself professionally?
How would I describe myself professionally? I am basically a structural geology, tectonics person who was fortunate to be a student and then a postdoc in the beginnings of the plate tectonic revolution, and it really, I would say, jazzed me for life, and I've gotten very enthusiastic about how mountain belts work, how plates work, and what their history has been, and also interested in writing books about these subjects to try to inform students and fellow colleagues about this sort of thing. I'm also very interested in the public awareness of geology. How do we take all this material that we are working on, and how do we communicate this to the people as a whole? How do we get geology in the popular sort of awareness, and how do we get students to take geology in secondary school?
Where does it come from, this vocation that you have?
This vocation, well, it's a kind of a chancy. I think all of these developments are somewhat by chance when you do develop them. When I was in high school, I was interested mostly in history and music, and then I had an opportunity to go to Caltech which gave me the most money for the colleges to which I applied. And so I went, and they didn't have any history and music there, and so the only field that I thought I could endure being specializing in was geology. Then I went to Princeton as a postdoc, as a graduate student, and the plate tectonic revolution was just beginning at Princeton. It was a very congenial place, very internationally oriented. So I think I got good preparation from Caltech, but then it was the international aspect of science and meeting people who were in a whole different group of fields the experience I got in Princeton, which I think was firm basis for my future career.
Who influenced you most in your career?
Well, I think it was people at Caltech. I think Lee Silver was my advisor. Hugh Taylor was a sort of a father figure for me in a way, a sort of senior brother or something. He was the one, I think, that convinced me I should go to graduate school. And so I did. I went to Princeton. At Princeton, I think the people that influenced me the most were Franklin Van Houten and Harry Hess and John Maxwell were the three favorite professors I had. Also Al Fisher. I worked first in Nevada. I started in Haiti, then I worked in Nevada, and then I had the opportunity to go to northern Greece to work on the Vourinos ophiolite in the days before we understood what ophiolites were, just as the whole idea of seafloor spreading was beginning to catch popularity, catch awareness.
Was that your wife? Were you
That was my wife. I was just waiting.
How important is your wife in your career?
My wife is very important in my career. I think it's without my wife, my career would not have been successful. She's been extremely supportive. She's a very smart, versatile, energetic person. It made my life a wonderful thing.
So, and beyond your wife, what is related your scientific success to?
Well, I think I was lucky. I think a lot of it is luck. It seems like I made a lot of good decisions, but I think back on them, many of them were not for very good reasons, but they turned out in retrospect to have been good ones.
What are those good decisions?
Well, good decisions like going to Princeton for graduate work, seizing the opportunity I wanted to go to Europe, seizing the opportunity to work on an obscure area in northern Greece, which turned out to become, by no fault of my own, to the idea of ophiolites and what they represented was a key sort of ingredient to, I think, the revolution in geology that was occasioned by the plate tectonic sort of recognition in modern plate activity. So that's, I think, luck also by getting an opportunity to come to UC Davis, which has been a wonderful place for me to be. I once said I thought that if I didn't have gasoline, I could probably do world-class research on my bicycle and from there. So there's a lot of interesting things that are surrounding that. So part of it's luck. I think also part of it, I've been able to be successful in attacking interesting problems and writing up papers that people find worthwhile for them to read.
So luck, but also merit. So what is
some merit?
merit?
I think one has to accept the fact that one must have some abilities in order to develop a career. I'm not a complete charlatan.
What legacy do you leave to geology?
legacy do I leave to geology? What legacy I would like to leave to geology is that it's a fun and interesting field to be in, that it's a subject about which every person should know. We live in a geologically active environment, and every student should have some knowledge of geology, I think, just for their ordinary living, especially in these days of increasing population, resource strains, climate change, and in California for earthquake issues. I would also like to leave a legacy that it's worth bringing all kinds of different thoughts from a variety of fields to focus on one particular thing, that one should try to be global in one's consideration of issues and problems and possibilities. One shouldn't be regional or local in your outlook. I would also like to think that I have a reputation for having been a nice person to work with, and a nice person for students to have worked under.
Eldridge, have you ever asked yourself where the scientific question arises from?
Where do scientific questions arise from? I think scientific questions arise from observing our surroundings and trying to understand what it is that we are dealing with.
So is the observations?
I think the observations are the first step in trying to understand what we're
But you
doing.
observe a lot of things.
Yes.
But then you stick on one specific question. Where does the specific question come from?
Again, I think comes out of your brain. I mean, I have a good memory, and I have a lot of material in my head, which is still mostly there, even though I'm getting on in years. And I think, so you observe something, and you try to relate what you see to what you have in your memory about other things, and trying to understand things. Landscape is there for a reason. The rocks that you see on a hillside are there for a reason, and the question is then, how do they occur, and why do they look the way they do? Why do structures look the way they do, and how can you relate them to other parts of the world?
So do you mean that the more you see, the better your question can be shaped?
I think that's correct. You know, the old aphorism that the best geologist is she who has seen the most rocks is one that I think we need to keep in mind. Yeah, I think that's...
So you need to be senior, not to say old, in order to be a good geologist.
Well, you can be a good geologist even starting out. You can be enthusiastic, and I think humility is another important part of being a good scientist and being a good geologist, and to realize that you have a lot to learn, not only from the landscape and the rocks in it worldwide, but also from other people.
Ophiolites. Do you want to tell us something about ophiolites, and what did you do?
What did I do? I started working in ophiolites in the early 1960s, in 1963, when it was before plate tectonics had been developed, and at the time there were three competing ideas about what they represented. And so I worked in northern Greece on a complex, the Vourinos complex. Working on that, I got information about the body on Cyprus, the Trotos ophiolite, and I was at the time walking back and forth from the apartment that I lived in Princeton to the geology department with Fred Vine, who had already proposed his seafloor spreading hypotheses relating to magnetic anomalies. And we kept trying to think of where, what it would look like, something that was formed by seafloor spreading. And we got these maps on Cyprus, and we looked at those and said, this is a possibility. So we applied for money to go work on it, and we then did succeed in doing that. We had to delay it a year because of the political... That's my phone. Okay. Well, I'll just... Sorry about that. I don't know who it was.
So you were walking back and forth from your apartment, and the idea came up while you were walking with Vine?
Well, the question came up. Fred was working on the oceanic crust, and we were wondering what these things might look like. We had a glimmering of an idea, actually from John Maxwell, among others, that we were looking at some sort of, in these ophiolites, we were looking at something that was oceanic. And to give him his due, Ian Gass of the UK had also published a paper on Cyprus and the gravity anomalies, and said that it was an oceanic thing that had been thrust up on top of seamount. But we were wondering, what would this stuff look like? What kind of rocks are you producing when you see seafloor spreading? And so we found, basically, when I got the maps on the mapping of the Trudeau's complex, and you could open it up, and there you could see dikes all running in the same direction for the entire width of the map. We thought, this looks like a good idea. And so we got Harry Hess's blessing to apply for money to go study it. And we did that, and that made a somewhat of a splash scientifically, and in particular at the Penrose conference that was here in 1968, or 1969. Then at that conference, we also worried at one session about how do you emplace ophiolites? How do you get ocean crust and mantle that's sitting 5 kilometers below sea level? How do you get the mantle and all those things up onto a continental margin? And that's where we came up with the idea that it was by a continent going down a subduction zone, stopping it, and then popping back up again and leaving a piece. Then I generalized that to an interpretation of the geology of the entire western United States. It didn't exactly make the top 20 charts geologically, or it has taken us a long time to do that. I've worked on trying to relate ophiolites worldwide to each other, and also what do ophiolites look like in the Precambrian, especially before 1,000 million years.
Well, you said in one of your talk that Occam's razor doesn't work in plate tectonics.
That's correct.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, Occam's razor is this doctrine that's from William of Ockham, who was a medieval British, probably minister, but philosopher, who said that you should take the simplest interpretation that the evidence gives you. But the simplest interpretation is probably the most important. What plate tectonics tells you, and especially when you're working in mountain belts or in the circum-Pacific region, is that the simplest idea is probably not correct because so many things could have happened. There are so many possibilities that of arrival of small terrains or large terrains, and then them being sliced up and others being mixed in with them and so forth, that looking at rocks with Occam's razor in your mind probably will give you the wrong answer.
So is that then you would say be creative and take risks?
I would say be creative and take risks. That's a quotation from Bruce Alberts, who was for several decades the president of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. And this was in a talk where he was sort of reminiscing about his own career in microbiology, in genetics, and he was one of the people that worked out how the DNA strands separated from each other and then recombined with new ones when cells divide. And so that's what made his name. And in order to do that, he thought they had to be creative and think about how these things happen. And I think that's good advice for any kind of a historical science like geology.
What did science give you?
What did science give me? Science gave me a career, a lifelong excitement about things, a sort of body of knowledge that for which I've had a lifelong indispensable partner, my wife, who's accompanied me on most of my travel, and it's given me a great enjoyment of life, and 3 great children and 3 great grandchildren.
Which conclusions from the balance of your life?
I would say the conclusions are enjoy life, try to keep life enjoyable as you go through it, try to be excited about things, be enthusiastic, be creative, take risks, be expansive, have a good time.
Is there anything that you regret?
Anything I regret? Oh, there are many things that I regret. I've made lots of mistakes along the way, and you just try to right those. You try to compensate for those by apologizing to the people that you may have offended or wronged, and just try to be understanding and compassionate, not only with other people and societies, but with yourself.
What is the most important thing in life?
The most important thing in life is having a great family and enjoying watching them go through life themselves.
Thank you very much, Eldridge.
Thank you.
And now let's go and enjoy the talk of your dear friend Dickinson.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, that was Eldridge Moores. And as you listen, he was ready to go and listen to his dear friend Bill Dickinson. What a coincidence. That was 2014. With both of them, they were in great shape, and they were still doing great geology. I really hope that the students of Bill and Eldridge, both the ones that they really studied with him, and the ones that just read the books or the articles that they wrote, they can move the ball forward in science, in the application of science, in speaking up about the importance of teaching and learning geology, and above all, the mindset of the geologists. This is Daniel Minizini, your inquisitive geologist here at KPFT HD2 channel, Montrose headquarters in Houston, Texas, USA. Thank you to everybody. See you next week. You can listen to this program again in the YouTube channel, www.minigeology.com, or you can write me at minigeology@gmail.com and write me about what you want to listen to, or if you want to interview somebody, or if you want to be interviewed. Okay, now to everybody again.
Forget about your troubles and your 9 to 5. Come on.